Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 3, text number 34. Indriyasyarte Ragadvesu Vyavastito Tayurna Vasam Agachet Tau Hayasya Paripartito. Indriyasyarte Ragadvesa Vyavastito Tayurna Vasam Agachet Tau Hayasya Paripantito. Indriyasyarte Ragadvesu Vyavastito Tayurna Vasam Agachet Tau Hayasya Paripantito. Somebody like to? Sate Ragadesha Vivastito Indriyasya Vivastito Indriyasyate Vivastito Synonyms. Indriyasya, of the senses. Indriyasyarte, in the sense objects. Raga, attachment. Dvesu, also detachment. Vyavasito, put under regulations. Tayur, of them. Na, never. Vasam, control. Agachet, one should come. Tau, those. He, certainly. Asya, his. Paripantito, stumbling blocks. Translation, Srila Prabhupada. They are principles to regulate attachment and aversion. pertaining to the senses and their objects. One should not come under the control of such attachment and aversion, because they are stumbling blocks on the path to self-realization. So let's repeat the translation. There are principles to regulate attachment and aversion, pertaining to the senses and their objects. Pertaining to and their objects. One should not come under the control of such attachment and aversion. Why? Because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. So let's see what Prabhupada put in the purport. Those who are in Krishna consciousness are naturally reluctant to engage in material sense gratification. But those who are not in such consciousness should follow the rules and regulations of the revealed scriptures. Unrestricted sense enjoyment is the cause of material engagement. Very strong words. But one who follows the rules and regulations of the revealed scriptures does not become entangled by the sense objects. For example, sex enjoyment is a necessity of the conditioned soul. And sex enjoyment is allowed under the license of marriage ties. According to the scriptural injunctions, one is forbidden to engage in sex relationship with any woman other than one's wife. All other women are to be considered as one's mother. But in spite of such injunctions, a man is still inclined to have sex relationships with other women. These propensities are to be curbed. Otherwise, they will be stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. As long as the material body is there, the necessities of the material body are allowed, but under rules and regulations. And yet we should not rely upon the control of such allowances. And yet we should not rely upon the control of such allowances. One has to follow those rules and regulations, unattached to them, because practice of sense gratification under regulations may also lead one to go astray. As much as there is allows the chance of an accident even on the royal roads. Although they may be very carefully maintained, no one can guarantee that there will be no danger on the safest road. The sense enjoyment spirit has been current a very long time, owing to material association. Therefore, in spite of regulated sense enjoyment, there is every chance of falling down. Therefore, any attachment for regulated sense enjoyment must also be avoided by all means. But attachment to Krishna consciousness, or attaining or acting always in the loving service of Krishna, detaches one from all kinds of sensory activities. Therefore, no one should try to be detached from Krishna consciousness at any stage of life. The whole purpose of detachment from all kinds of sense attachment is ultimately to become situated on the platform of Krishna consciousness. Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavanamuscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Tam Tam Satiram Sadvaitam Sarvadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakanamuscha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paskacharya Siddharine Vancha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhuveva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we welcome everybody to today's Gita class. We in a very exciting part of the third chapter. We've been hearing so much about Karma Kanda and Karma Yoga. Right in the beginning of this chapter, if we follow the systematic study of this chapter, then we in the fifth part of the third chapter. This fifth part explains elevation from elevation to Karma Yoga is what it's entitled, verses 30 to 35, that part. So we're on verse 34. So it's a very significant part that we're discussing. And if you remember, just in summary at the beginning, Krishna immediately told Arjuna that this is because he was perplexed. What should I do? Coming from that 254 verse, Stita Pragya Kabashuse Samadhistasya Keshava Stitadir Kim Prabhaseta Kim Brajeta Aseta Kim. How does one work in this world? How does he meditate? How does he walk? How does he sit? So from that question, when the third chapter started, Arjuna had doubt. Should I fight or not fight? Should I be this sadhu kind of person? Or should I actually fight? So he was confused. And then Krishna says, no, for you Arjuna, you should do Karma Yoga. You should fight. Then it started to unfold from there. And then we learnt about Karma Kanda. This Karma Kanda is a very interesting aspect of the Vedic system, because it's actually authorized sense gratification. There is no other system that actually gives such a systematic way of enjoying one's senses, but under Vedic regulation. Authorized sense gratification. This is what Karma Kanda is. But where we are today, we are in the 34th verse, right up to this point from 30. Then Krishna explained different forms, different types, different systems, and then he explained that for you Arjuna, you should do this Karma Yoga. You should fight. So that's what we're hearing about today. So this part between 30 and 35 is called how Karma Yoga elevates one. Remember, the goal of Bhagavad Gita is? What is the goal of Bhagavad Gita? Bhakti. We want to come to the point of Bhakti. We're still on the first level. We haven't touched Gyan yet. We're still on the first part, the Karma part, and it's a progressive part. But even though we're still there, due to the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and the previous Acharyas, they are hinting, like we will see in today's verse also, how that even though we're discussing the body, even though we're discussing about Karma Yoga and Karma Kanda, The goal is not that, it's bhakti, to get to Krishna. And Prabhupada always brings the purport back to that. You'll find at the beginning of the purport, Prabhupada will somehow mention about the body. Somehow, we'll see today also. Somehow he'll mention something about the body and connection to the body, and you're not the body. So once you get that part, then what is the goal? And at the end, he'll usually end the paragraph or the purport off with this point, reminding us that Krishna is the goal. We'll see that today also. Okay? So in the 30th verse, Maya Sarvani Karmani, if you can open to the 30th verse, we see this. This is where this whole part of this chapter is unfolding. Because there, Krishna is saying, in the translation to text number 30, therefore Arjuna, surrendering all work unto me, that means you should work for me. Now karma kanda, we're not working for Krishna, we want to get our own sense gratification. So automatically there's a high one level up. Now we're discussing karma yoga. So automatically Krishna has moved it up one level. But even at that, the acharyas, especially Prabhupada, he's guiding us that the goal is not this. Don't get swayed away by this. And if you get, then this will be the result, like we'll hear about today. So Krishna is saying that, therefore Arjuna, surrendering all works unto me with full knowledge of me, without desires for profit, with no claim for proprietorship. This is completely free from karma kanda then. And free from lethargy, laziness, not wanting to do things. Fight. This is what you have to do. You have to fight. So not only that one should offer the fruits of one's activity to the Lord, but also the focus is on Krishna now. He's making himself the center there in that verse. He's saying, I am the goal of all this, Arjuna. Indirectly he's saying, I am the goal of this. If you remember this point, you caught the understanding of karma yoga. And then you can develop your relationship with me. That's why this is the seed, it's a seed verse in this part, this number 30. Because Krishna is personally putting himself in the center. He's the centrifugal force of spiritual energy that's coming out in this chapter. So he's saying, this is the goal I want you to get to. Don't worry about karma kanda and karma yoga. Those things are on the bodily concept. And expanding on that, Prabhupada explains the rest of the purport, which we'll go through just now. So the theme here then, Arjuna has a certain duty to perform. He has to do something. So the theme of this particular section, 30 to 35, is how to dovetail one's nature. And this is the biggest, most practical question of any devotee's life. What should I do? Arjuna had the same problem. Should I fight? Should I not fight? Should I just sit and do bhajan and chant and be sthita pragya? Or should I actually fight? And Krishna is saying there, no, you should fight. You should do work, do practical activity. And this is the defining feature of Prabhupada's definition of bhakti. How did Prabhupada, if you read other Hindu translations in Hinduism and other translations of the word bhakti, it's more an emotional expression of sentiment. But Prabhupada, how did he define it in Nectar of Instruction? Bhakti is devotional service. It's an active cultivation. Have you ever heard this definition of bhakti as devotional service before? You'd have never read it anywhere. But if you break those two words up, it's the emotional sentiment in the word devotion and service, practical application. How can you have love if you're not rendering service? You cannot just have sentiment with no service. That is sahaja. You have to have some practical service. Just like the mother is serving the child. So this is the outstanding definition of devotion that Prabhupada brings to us, expresses to us. active cultivation of devotion and practical application through service. Very, very powerful definition. So, having understood that definition, then we have to understand our own nature, because then we see, so what's my place in this? Mam evamsa jiva loke, jiva bhuta sanatana, I'm part of Krishna, I'm his eternal servant, so what's my place in this? So we have to come to terms with our nature. What is in this current body that we have, be it male or female, what is the nature that this body has? What is its constitution? What is its, both its psychological nature and its physical nature? So it's called psychophysical nature in technical terms. I have to try to get to terms with this. If you more mode of goodness, then you like more like Brahmanical kind of activities. If you more mode of passion, then you like more practical service kind of activities. So these different things are there, and we have to try to assess this about ourselves. So the theme is dovetailing. Now in Vedic philosophy, a major part of any sadhana is discipline. Sadhana means discipline, and discipline automatically means regulation. There are certain things you can't do, and there are certain things you can't do. So what makes Vedic philosophy very interesting is that it encourages certain urges and it rejects certain urges. It encourages certain urges to be developed in regulation, and it totally rejects certain urges. Based on the principle of sadhana, based on our practice. What are you wanting to achieve? As a disciple who is practicing a disciplined lifestyle, he wants to achieve something. So what do you want to achieve by that? Now, in the general definition of spirituality, usually people take the spiritual life to get something from God, right? Like everybody may ask this question: what is the duty of God? This is Akbar and Birbal. Akbar and Birbal. So he's asking, what is the duty of God? What is he supposed to do for me? I'm supposed to get something from him. What is he supposed to do for me? And the answer is, he's supposed to be our supplier. And that's the first level of which Krishna started this chapter. Karma Kanda. You want something, you pray to God, He'll give it to you. The second level, which goes higher, is to try to understand your connection with God. And by understanding that, you realize there's a higher level of enjoyment rather than just sensory. Like Prabhupada says, sensory enjoyment. It's objectives, sensory objectives. So there's a higher level. And the process of Krishna consciousness is to elevate the consciousness to higher levels of enjoyment. We are limited with the senses, right? You can only eat so much, you can only see so much, you can only hear so much. What if there's another way, better, and you still enjoy more? And that's what spiritual life is offering. So the higher level comes to Karmakanda. So the process is then to try to break down your identity. When you do that, you realize, I'm in two parts here. I have my physical body and I have my subtle body. This is just on the basics. And like you see here, this figure is trying to break down the physical body. Breaking down doesn't mean beating up, right, as Mayavadis do, but it means philosophically understanding. I'm not the body. And this is a defining feature of Srila Prabhupada. Every other personality who comments on Vedic Siddhanta will mention about being spirit. Aham Brahmasmi. I am spirit soul. You must have heard this even before you joined Krishna consciousness, right? But has anybody taught us practically how to be spirit soul? This is Srila Prabhupada. What he's done, he's taken the same aphorism, but he's made it not I am spirit soul, but I am not the body. It's the same thing. But he's just turned it around and made it practical so we can understand. And that's the level that spirituality starts on. He's saying the same thing. I am Brahmasmi. If you are spirit, then you can't be the body. But nobody stresses on the body part. They just stress on the spirit part. And as sadhakas, we're not on that level yet to see spirit or to act as spirit. Isn't it? So Prabhupada had made it so simple. Same point, just turn it the other way around. Instead of saying I'm not spirit, better to say I'm not the body. Simple point, but very, very effective. So we want to break down that conditioning. At least you want to philosophically come to it. So the verse we did yesterday was explaining about material nature and material desire. Now that's the discerning point for today's verse, because 33 was explaining the difference between Prakriti and Vasana. Prakriti is material nature and Vasana is material desires. Because there seems to be a contradiction here. If you look carefully in yesterday's translation, Krishna is saying don't repress. What will repression get? You will not achieve anything by trying to repress or trying to cover it. You're not being natural. Repression is not a natural activity. And today's verse, he's saying no, you should regulate. That means you should do something. Not yesterday he's saying don't do anything, repression, and today he's saying you should do something. So the understanding of it is that yesterday Krishna is speaking of material nature, and today's verse he's speaking about material desires. That material desires is what we should try to give up. At least try to dovetail those we can in Krishna consciousness. And if we can't dovetail it, then we have to give it up, especially if we're following a discipline. So we have to come to terms with our psychophysical nature. What is my mentality and what is my physical makeup? What is my mind like and what is my body like? And by coming to terms with that, Prabhupada expands the rest of today's purport by explaining this. He gives the example of sex life in this material world. So we know, we've been hearing how powerful this energy is. It's a natural energy, a natural phenomena of this material world, and it's one of the most difficult energies to try to sort of dovetail, especially in spiritual life, because it's a very powerful energy. Like we'll see here, I'll just show you an example quickly. How powerful is this? Especially when we're young children, we don't see the power of this energy, but as we become adolescents, it becomes very strong and it becomes active and it becomes an urge. Vacha vegam manasakroda vegam jiva vegam udara pasta vegam. It becomes a powerful urge. So at that young age, it's so powerful that many of us at that age, if we don't have proper training, we don't know how to deal with it. Now we're going to see practically how in a Western situation, how it's so easily to get bewildered, right? So this young boy is our example for today, and just watch what happens to him. You see what happened to him? He's just a young boy, he doesn't know much, right? But as soon as two females walked past behind him, what happened to him? immediately the energy pulls. And immediately he gets pulled into the different direction. He's not aware that he's looking. He's not aware how powerful the energy is. But it just drags him. Now we want to hear from Prabhupada, because one disciple asked Prabhupada how to deal with this energy. And then we'll go over the rest of the purport. Right? So let's see what Prabhupada says here.
Sex desire, it's serving Krishna energy that we can't control. She's going into his sexual desires. How many channel that into using that energy for Krishna?
Okay, the question was how to dovetail this sex desire in service of Krishna. Let's see how Prabhupada answers.
Sex desire is not unnatural.
It's not unnatural.
But you can interact.
Yeah? Okay, I'll cut the volume.
But Krishna's service.
Can you hear now?
You can produce Krishna conscious children.
So Prabhupada said you can produce Krishna conscious children.
So you don't prohibit. Our process is that everything should be in the service of Krishna.
And Prabhupada said the same thing in the purport also. You try to use everything for Krishna's service.
The others, they are producing children like cats and dogs.
That's unregulated life.
If you produce children, Krishna conscious, the face of the world will change.
So if you want to change society, start with the children. And if you produce good children, then that will become the new generation.
So, sex desire is not unnatural.
So it's not an unnatural phenomena, it's a natural phenomena. So the point is how to use this energy, this phenomena in Krishna's service as somebody who's practicing sadhana bhakti.
Natural. Just like to become hungry. The hungry means it is healthy life.
So Prabhupada gives example, to become hungry. The hungry means it's an urge, but it shows that your health is good because you have fire. That means you have hunger, means your health is good to digest now. If you don't have fire, if you don't have hunger, how will you digest the food? So it's a natural urge. Now to suppress it is artificial.
But it is the thing what you are eating.
So Prabhupada says, the thing what you are eating. You can satisfy hunger with anything, right? But you can get sick by eating. Can you imagine you say, I'm hungry and give me a whole pot of rasgullas? Right? You'll get sick by doing that. Yet you'll satisfy your hunger. So at the same time, Prabhupada is using the same point for this principle.
That is the thing. That will be considered whether you will keep yourself healthy or you will become diseased. That if you feel hunger, that is not unnatural. Similarly, if you feel sex desire, that is not unnatural. That is natural. But you have to utilize, that is restraint of the Shastra.
That Prabhupada calls as restraint, utilizing it in Krishna's service.
The Shastra very Muslim. What Shastra says, how we shall utilize. The Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that the regulated way of sex life, myself, he says, the sex life is not condemned.
So it's not condemned. So Prabhupada is guiding us saying, well, you can use it in this way. And that's the only way it should be used. Other than that, it's not going to be accepted or seen as a shastric following. Because it is a powerful energy. Like Krishna describes, it's Nitya Vairena. It's the most powerful, our arch enemy. Evam buddhi param bhutva samstabhaya atmanam atmana jahe shatru mahabaho kama rupa durassadam. This Kama Rupa Durasadam is very difficult. But using Evam Buddhi Param Bhutva, use your higher intelligence to dovetail this, to curtail this. So as it's an important part of our spiritual practice to try to come to grips with this part of our biological aspect, our physical nature. Then we work on our spiritual nature through that. Because if this is not properly understood and properly used in Krishna's service, then it's going to create disturbances later on. So it's very important. That's why Prabhupada took this example, and for the rest of the chapter, rest of the purport, he expressed this point. So, okay, let's go through. Yes. So Prabhupada explains the way to regulate this energy is through marriage, proper marriage. But at the same time he's saying, don't think that just by getting married it's going to solve the problem. Because now you're in contact with the object of the senses directly and there's no restraint. So if you think that just by getting into a marriage situation it's going to help without any understanding, you're going to be actually pouring more fuel on the fire. So Prabhupada really goes through a great lengths to express this point. Now we see, just to lighten it up a bit, somebody sent me this pic. It's the post and past phases of a chicken, right? So you got the female chicken on the left here, and we got the rooster on the bottom here, and both are single at this point, right? And after marriage, then she seems to be put on a little bit of weight, and look what happened to this guy. He's all plucked up, so it's not easy. It's not going to be easy. So it's not easy. So the point is that if we don't understand how this whole mechanism is working, we're going to end up in more trouble. Because we have to be accountable at that point. So just by thinking that if one gets into a marriage situation, it's going to solve it, it's not. It has to be understood. And that's why the responsibility, like Prabhupada is stressing also, the responsibility of that ashram is to create God-conscious children. Once that principle is active, once children are there in the ashram, then automatically the focus is not on the body anymore, on the physical body, it's not on man and wife anymore, it's on husband and wife, which means children. Children is the center. And when children are the center, then the whole focus goes towards nurturing them, giving them proper guidance, character, culture, spirituality. So the focus of the external reason of marriage, which is the sex life aspect, is not so strong. Therefore, in that ashram, then one can make proper advancement. Prabhupada says here, which is, I was just reading something yesterday. This devotee was getting initiated by Prabhupada. Alright, so Prabhupada, he was really all excited, young boy, brahmachari, and he comes up to Prabhupada in the front there, and Prabhupada says, so, what are the 4 principles? And then he starts, right? And he chants the 3 principles, and guess which one he forgot? Yes, he forgot that one, right? So Prabhupada says, yes, and so in that excitement he forgot the 4th principle, which is illicit sex life, right? So then the devotees behind prompted him. So he said, oh yes, Prabhupada. So Prabhupada says, was that your favorite one? So Prabhupada, was that your favorite? So you had to regulate your life. So Prabhupada could be humorous at that also. So in the purport, Prabhupada says that those in Krishna consciousness are naturally reluctant to engage in sense gratification. Why is that? Because they are also experiencing gratification of the senses, but it's a spiritual gratification. Yes, it's the higher level. Param distam vishaya vinivartante nirharasya dehinam rasovasya rasovarja rasopyasya param distam nivartate. They are also enjoying, they are also relishing, but the senses are limited, and a devotee knows that. But by engaging the senses in a higher taste, spiritual taste, then is experiencing something higher. Therefore the lower level, it's there, but it's not attractive anymore. It's not, and it's a sign of advancement. That's why Prabhupada in the purport also mentioned conditioned soul. So our conditionings, usually our eating, sleeping, mating and defending, this is our like Nitya Leela pastimes here in the material world. This is what we enjoy the most and do the most and relish the most. But for a devotee, these things are pratikul. They're not favorable. So he tries to limit it. And towards the end of Prabhupada, when Prabhupada left here, this material world, he was saying how my body is finished now. Now I can't even sleep anymore. That means, what to speak of eating, he couldn't eat anymore. He couldn't sleep anymore. Forget about mating and defending. So he says, now finished. Whole 4, finished. But those not in search of consciousness should follow rules and regulations. So regulation means to regulate, to streamline. This is what it means to be disciplined as a disciple. We try to streamline and keep Krishna as the goal. Vivasatmika buddhi eke kurunandana bahushaka hoyanantascha buddhiyor vivasayam. He keeps the mind focused on the goal. If you have Krishna as the goal, then everything else is secondary. You have the supreme goal, the supreme enjoyer, the supreme unlimited expression of anything that exists is all there within Krishna. And if we just connect to that, then everything that we desire not only will be happy to experience, but we'll have another kind of experience called satisfaction. And that is not present in the material world. Satisfaction is not present in the material world. Some kind of happiness is, but not satisfaction. That only comes, yayatma supasiddhati. That only comes on the level of the soul. And that is what Krishna is offering us. So, there are many necessities of life, material, bodily necessities, but also which are allowed under rules and regulations, and yet we should not rely upon and control such allowances. Like we said, it can easily, thinking that by getting into a marriage situation I can be now pacified, you can actually fuel the whole situation further. It needs proper guidance. One has to follow those rules and regulations, unattached to them. Because we get attached so easily. By nature, the jiva gets attached because we are ashraya. We have to take shelter somewhere. And that propensity to take shelter means we get attached to things. So if we get attached to things, why not get attached to that which doesn't change, which gives everything we want, just under proper guidance. So that's what Prabhupada is offering here. So, because the practice of sense gratification under regulations may also lead one astray, as much as there is always a chance for an accident even on the royal roads. So it's also dangerous there. Marriage can become an arrangement that just fuels one's material desires. It is not that the regulations will protect one. We have to be aware and guard against this. So 2 necessities of life, the physical necessity, the urge to eat, the urge to sleep, the urge to mate, and the urge to defend. And also the psychological necessity to keep the mind peaceful. And both of these this sexual energy falls into both categories. It's an urge as well as a psychological pleasure. Therefore, it's so powerful. It's very powerful in that way. But if we understand it in its proper constitution, as God has designed it for, otherwise, what is the purpose? Like today, what is the purpose of marriage today? What is the purpose of marriage? Because we have not understood this principle, we feel, well, marriage just means two people coming together and staying together. Well, if that is so, then why need to get married? They can do that without being married. And that's how it is today. Because they miss the principle of it. So it's an important part to consider in our lives. Let's see, I have one more point here. So the ultimate purpose of life is coming to become happy. We all are seeking this in some form or the other. But what Krishna consciousness is offering as a dynamic expression of spiritual energy. It's a dynamic expression. It's giving us an active principle by which we can engage everything, the subtle body, the physical body, and experience our true nature as the spiritual body. Therefore, it's complete in that way. So, what happens then if we just take a scenario? I have a picture. Let me put. This one. So, what happens with unfulfilled desires then? Like you see this old lady on a wheelchair, and in the background on the wall, you see a dancing young lady. So she's an old lady now, she probably can't walk, she's on a wheelchair, but her desire is to dance like a young girl. So that's the expression of the material world. Because if it doesn't happen today, it's going to happen very soon. And it's going to happen, I was speaking to one devotee today. And this devotee was like saying how difficult it is to eat and digest food, simple food. This devotee is not eating the normal food that we eat. This devotee is just taking like brown rice, no milk products, just to get some nourishment in the body. So when you're young, you don't think about it, right? You have a voracious appetite, you can eat, and health is good and life is good. But as you get older, the reality of I'm not the body really sets in. You really have this vivid experience. What to speak of sense gratification through sex life. You can't eat anymore because you can't digest anymore. This devotee was saying, the doctor told this devotee that they are drowning in the mucus from the lungs. So much of mucus is being secreted by the lungs that this devotee is literally drowning. What a wonderful place to be in. So the material body has its limitation. Now how to get enjoyment in that case? The desire is still there, like we saw this lady in the wheelchair. But if we practice sadhana, in all situations, sadhana is a standard. It doesn't change. The physical body will change. Ashrams will change. We may be in different psychophysical natures. All of those things will change. But the sadhana that we perform, that will never change. And that gives us the impetus to focus more on that while we can when we are young. Because the strength is there, the mental stability is there, the enthusiasm and the eagerness is there to do austerities and different things. When you're older, it's not a matter of choice anymore. You have to be austere just to live. It's a very difficult reality of life. So better while we're young, practice this at a younger age. And whatever psychophysical nature we have, that we have to adapt ourselves to, then naturally we should move into that direction. It's a natural thing. Prabhupada is saying that natural. Natural progression. But the sadhana that we perform, that is standard in every situation. So attachment and aversion is always going to be there, dualities of life. But what we do for Krishna, what service we can do to please Krishna in our capacities that we have, let us try to do this to the best ability that we can, to the purest, sincere way that we can. Ultimately, that is what will count. When the body drops, when we incapacitated, that is what will count. Krishna will judge by that. Tesham satati yuktanam bhajata pritipurvakam. That loving devotional service that you rendered to me, Krishna will think, I'll not forget that. That's where we want to be. That is our ashraya. That is our shelter. So if we keep this in mind consciously daily, then it becomes a practice, it becomes a sadhana. And as daily we practice it like we do our reading and chanting, it becomes part of our life to take shelter of Krishna. When we in that stage of consciousness where constantly we're taking shelter of Krishna, then whether we hear, whether there's dualities, wherever we are, we're in the best place, we're in the most secure place, directly in Krishna's shelter. So we'll stop there. Anybody would like to ask any questions? Or